Welcome to the Succession Matching Ambassador Program, which is administered by Succession Plan Canada. This is the first session in which an introduction to the program and a high-level overview of some of the topics we'll get into more in the future. My name is Allison Anderson, and I'll be your instructor for this session. Before we get started on the workshop proper, let's go over some housekeeping items. Starting with a technology check. Throughout the presentation, you'll be asked to work in your e-handbook. When you signed up for the Ambassador Program, you would have received an individualized link for this e-handbook, so you can check your emails for that. Let's make sure that your e-handbook is open to page 1. Please be advised that any information you enter into your e-handbook may be shared internally at Succession Matching across different service teams. But this sharing is limited to internal use only, with specific intention of positioning our teams to provide optimal services to you. You'll also be able to toggle between this presentation and the e-handbook by using Alt-Tab from your desktop computer. Alternatively, you can just click back and forth between the windows. But let's go ahead and test that out. Lastly, as we go through the presentation today, I want to remind everyone that this information we're sharing with you in this presentation, e-handbook, and other resources is for general purposes only. We're not providing legal, accounting, taxation, or other professional advice to you or your clients. Before acting on any of this information, business owners and entrepreneurs should always consult a qualified professional who have thoroughly examined their specific legal and tax situation. What's the purpose of today's session? Well, over the next hour, we're going to accomplish an overview on economic development organizations and their staff, for the information about the Ambassador Program, succession planning, and business transitions. How we're going to accomplish this is going through goals and objectives. Participants, meaning you, will understand the program and your role in it, know what succession planning is and its importance, understand 3 common types of business transitions, and finally, we're going to wrap up by applying this knowledge in realistic case studies. Objective number 1. The first learning objective of this session is to provide you an overview of the program and your role in it. Many of you might have a good idea what the program is and what you hope to get out of it, while others may know little about the program but are eager to learn more. So we'll cover off some of the basics about the program right now and make sure that we're all on the same page. To begin, imagine a client walks into your office and they say, "I'm thinking of selling my business. I'd like to sell within the next 6 months. I haven't done much to prepare." And then they ask you, where do I start? How much is it worth? What are my options? Who should I talk to? Ultimately, what they're asking is, what do I do? I'm sure many of you have had experiences like this, or maybe you're anticipating that you'll start receiving a lot more questions like these from your clients. Or perhaps you know some of your clients should be asking these questions but aren't. And maybe you're not quite sure how you can best help your clients in this situation. It's not a particularly easy situation to be in, and if you've never had a chance to really invest in understanding the succession planning and business transition process, then the Succession Matching Ambassador Program may be just what you're looking for. So what is the Ambassador Program? Concisely, it is a comprehensive educational program to support economic development organizations and their staff in delivering services through the business transition process. I'll take a couple minutes to just explain a little bit about what some of these terms mean. First, let's go a little bit more in depth on what I mean by comprehensive educational program. The program has 3 educational goals. Each goal represents a broad area of learning that ambassadors, meaning you, will expect to know, understand, and do upon completion of the program. These broad areas of learning are formal succession plans. By the end of the program, ambassadors, meaning you, will be able to take a systematic approach to one-on-one consulting with business owners to help them set up a formal succession plan. Client engagement. You will also receive training and materials to inform your clients about succession planning by facilitating workshops and presentations. You will be able to deliver workshops on the following topics: business transition and succession planning for startups, and not-for-profit succession planning. Foreign direct investment. You'll receive information about provincial nominee programs in your jurisdiction and be able to determine the P&P eligibility of a business. Everything that we do in this program is aimed at providing you with the knowledge, tools, and skills for these 3 goals. Under each of these goals, there are a number of specific learning outcomes. The learning outcomes are divided into knowledge, things you will know, and abilities, things that you will do as a result of the program. Here are many, but not all, of the knowledge learning outcomes. So by the end of the program, you will know what the program is and your role in it, what succession planning is and its importance, what formal succession planning is and why it is valuable for business owners, which professionals should be involved at which points of the planning process, what the process of selling a business to an international buyer involves, what the eligibility requirements for the provincial nominee are, what are some strategies for public speaking and one-on-one consulting are. And here are the other half the major learning outcomes of the program, which are devoted to skills and abilities. What you'll be able to do by the end of the program is identify the stage of ownership transitions and timelines involved, explain the advantages and disadvantages of the 3 types of ownership transitions, guide a client through the completion of a formal succession plan, assist a client in preparing a sell book, plan educational opportunities for your clients, run online and in-person workshops, determine the P&P eligibility of a business, conduct a successful exploratory visit. So putting together all of the knowledge and all of the abilities, by the end of the program, you may be able to deliver services throughout your client's business transition processes. Now, of course, it's important to note that both the knowledge and ability learning outcomes are subject to change as we regularly update our content to reflect the most recent information and best practices available to us. What is the Ambassador Program? How are you actually going to acquire this knowledge and abilities? Primarily, the goal of the program will be to achieve through training courses composed of 5 approximately 2-hour workshops that are live or watching the recorded version like you are right now, referred to as sessions. These topics addressed in each session are overview of the program and introduction to succession planning, which is the session we're doing right now, formal succession plans, client engagement, international buyers, and best practices to help you maximize your client's chances of success. Already you can see how these sessions are themed specifically around the goals and learning outcomes of the program. While each session targets specific goals and outcomes, there is a lot of crossover between them as well. So even in today's introduction, we're going to cover materials that pertain to formal succession plan, client engagement, and even international buyers. In order to successfully complete the program, you will need to demonstrate competency and ability in the learning outcomes. To do that, you will have to attend every program session, score a minimum of 50% of each of the end of session evaluations. The links for these evaluations can be found in the password protected website that was provided to you as an ambassador. Score a minimum of 70% on the end of program evaluation. This evaluation is based on the previous evaluations, so there won't be any surprises. If you've missed something from a previous session, you have lots of time to correct it before the final one. Successfully complete one formal succession plan with a client. This is something we'll go into more detail in session 2, formal succession plans. As a part of the program, we will work with you on realistic case studies. Something you will be tasked with is creating a realistic case study based on your own knowledge and experience. Complete the PMP eligibility exercise. We will talk more about this in session 4, but it involves profiling businesses in your region in terms of the PMP eligibility based on publicly available information. Complete a best practice presentation. This is something that we go into more detail in session 3, client engagement. You'll be expected to do a short presentation on the last session of the program based on your experiences with succession planning. Now, this might look like a lot of work, but the program is designed in such that if you attend every session, participate in group discussions when available, and do the exercises in your e-handbook, you're completing these tasks. The extra effort required beyond these workshops will be both minimal and very practical. We estimate the program will take about 25 hours in total, 10 hours for the 5 workshops, about 10 hours for the formal succession plan, and 2 to 5 hours for quizzes and tasks. It's just part of making sure we're working towards our learning goals together. It's like making a New Year's resolution to start going to the gym more. If you do it by yourself, there's a larger chance that you'll quit within the first month or 2. But if you make the resolution with a friend or a personal trainer, someone who's going to help you set goals, give you the tools you need to reach them, and keep track of your progress, and motivate you to work out, the chances of achieving these goals are far greater. Here's a quick reminder of all the different completions. All right, so we're going to turn to page 5 of our e-handbook to complete this exercise. If a colleague were to ask you, what is the Succession Matching Ambassador Program? How would you respond? Take a minute to fill in that section that's highlighted in red on the right-hand side of your screen. Here is our nice, concise summary again. Now that you know what we mean by comprehensive educational program, that's all the sessions, learning outcomes, and assessments we just discussed. But you probably still have some questions about why and how. So in order to fully understand the program as a whole and more about your role within it, it's important to know its purpose and what it's meant to achieve. That leads us into our second objective of the day. To know what succession planning is and its importance. So to begin, I want to ask everyone, what is succession planning? We're all approaching this topic from different perspectives and experiences. So think of what it means to you. How would you define it? We're going to turn to page 5 of your handbook and complete exercise 2A. Please only answer 2A, which is, what is your definition of succession planning? Please do not answer the questions following that yet. I'll give you 1 minute to answer that now. Please feel free to pause this recording if you need a couple more minutes, but we're going to move along in the interest of efficiency. So what is your definition of succession planning? It would make sense to get a few different responses since succession planning is unique to the business or organization that individuals work for. It's really important that you understand succession planning within the context that you'll be using it, and that's going to mean different for different clients. For that reason, your individual group or definition may be most practical for your context. Nevertheless, it's good to have a common ground when discussing this topic. So in general speaking terms, succession matching defines succession planning as preparing the process and schedule for the inevitable farm and business transition, ideally between an existing owner and an incoming one. This definition is a combination of the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses definition and succession matchings. The process and schedule is part of the CFIB definition, and it is important to note that these two aspects of succession planning will always contain unique elements, particular to the business or organization. The word inevitable, the last part about the existing and incoming owners, are succession matching's addition to this definition. It aligns with our vision of what we do and what we get out of the ambassador program and why it was created. The ambassador program itself was developed in response to a problem. As CEO and founder of Succession Matching and Succession Plan Canada, I was previously working at Community Futures as an economic development officer and noticed that there was a few businesses or business buyers that had all the knowledge and skills and abilities required to facilitate an ownership transition. Oftentimes, they weren't aware of the process or had unrealistic timelines and expectations and didn't know where to begin or who to talk to. As a consequence of this, many business owners risked selling their business for less than it's worth, transitioning ownership to someone they didn't want to or were underqualified, and not receiving the value of the business simply because they didn't know how to properly plan their succession plan and structure the sale. Moreover, improper planning also increases the risk that the business owner would end up doing an asset sale instead of having the business transition to continue to provide products and services under new ownership. As anyone who's lived in a smaller or rural community knows, these local businesses are really the lifeblood of our communities. And continuing under this ownership not only is something that the business owner desires, but it's also something that would significantly benefit the communities that they operate in. Proper succession planning could not only make the owner's business more attractive and valuable to the potential buyer, but it could significantly increase the chances the businesses would succeed under new ownership and continue supporting the local residents and our economies. Unfortunately, there's been no centralized place or person that clients could go to in order to get all the information and support that they needed. Even more unfortunate, it's not an isolated problem that only affected where I lived in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. As many of you are aware, we have an aging population. This means for the first time in Canada, we have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 15. 72% of business owners intend to exit their business within the next decade. $1.5 trillion in business assets will be transitioned, and only 8% have a formal succession plan. These stats come from the 2018 CFIB report that tell us why succession planning matters to our society and our communities. The report states a faulty or badly executed succession planning process could have a ripple effect throughout the Canadian economy via reduced productivity, job losses, and increased bankruptcy rates. So it's obvious that many business owners, buyers, and their communities needed help to facilitate ownership transitions and benefit everyone involved. If a business owner were able to properly do a succession plan, there could be numerous benefits to them. It could help their business maximize their opportunities to sell. It could also help them manage privacy and communication during the sale to ensure their customers, suppliers, and employee relationships were maintained, thus maintaining the value of the business. It could help them prepare for the unexpected, both good and bad. And I know we've seen a lot of that in the last year. Their succession plan could help their company grow and expand if it involved a partnership or employee share ownership plan or something of that nature. And lastly, having a succession plan could help them prepare the day that they wish to pursue other opportunities, whether that's starting a new business, making a change of lifestyle, etc. So succession planning is beneficial for many reasons, but as we can see here, one of the most important reasons for a business owner is that it can increase the saleable value of the business, and the value of their business mostly comes down to a combination of performance and risk. A succession plan could reduce the risk of purchasing their business because it would explain how they, the owner, can transition out without negatively affecting its performance. So this is our solution. The Succession Matching Ambassador has the general knowledge, abilities, tools, and resources to help business owners and buyers conduct a successful business transition that benefits all parties involved, including the communities and the businesses. This does not mean succession matching ambassadors are tax or legal experts or give that kind of advice. Far from it. Rather, it does mean is that you can help guide your clients towards such professionals at appropriate times by helping them set goals, organize their information, find what they need to advance their succession plans, and carry it through the business transition. As economic development officers, you're uniquely positioned to help in this way because many of you already know the specific needs and desires of your clients and where they are at in their business planning, business operations, and succession planning process. That is what we mean by delivering services throughout the business transition process. This is what the program was designed for, and now you know what it is, its purpose, and your role within it. You also know what succession planning is and the importance to your clients, community, and society. We're going to turn back to our e-handbooks on page 5 and complete the exercises 2B, 3A, and 3B. I'll give you a minute to fill in those sections. Perfect. Well, I'm going to welcome you back. Just a quick reminder, if you didn't have enough time to fill in those sections, you can always pause this recording and resume once you've filled them in. So we also want you to think about what stood out to you and your group as an ambassador as you plan for retirement. Which brings us to the end of the first session. So far, we've learned what the aim and goals of the program are, the requirements to successfully complete the program, the origin, purpose, and value of the program, your role as an ambassador to your colleagues, clients, and communities. And in objective 2, what we've learned so far is what the succession planning is, both generally speaking as well as for yourself. Why is it important to you and all the business owners? And why is it important in your communities and society? Succession planning is not always easy, and your clients may be reluctant to start and carry out their succession plans. So having a clear understanding of its worth and value can help your clients stay motivated throughout the process. Moving right along to our third objective of the day, we're going to talk about 3 common types of business transitions and their advantages and their disadvantages. First, what is a business owner transition? To keep it simple, ownership transition occurs when the majority owner or owners of a business change. The relationship between the previous and the succeeding owners defines what the type of transition it is. When a business owner or owners decide to sell their business, they usually have 3 options. Family transition. In this transition, both the previous one or more majority owners of the incoming one or more majority owners belong to the same family. Employee share ownership plans, or ESOPs for short, is where the incoming one or more owners are already employees of the business. And third-party sale is in which one or more of the owners are not family or employee relationships with the previous one or more owners. Depending on the complexity of the business structure, it's not always clear-cut which options are the best or preferable for the transition. And in some cases, there could be crossover between these categories. For example, if a business owner has many employees and some of them are family, then they might want to consider a combination of a family transition and an ESOP. This would be a case where the owners will need to consult with professionals who know their tax and legal situation to figure out what's possible and how to best go about it. But in terms of what's preferable, each type of transition has some general advantages and disadvantages that may help point business owners in the direction to investigate further. Given your experience working with owners and entrepreneurs, you may already know many of the advantages and disadvantages. So we're going to go ahead and start a short quiz to see how many of you, if you can guess many of these in advance. So please turn to page 6 of your e-handbook and complete this exercise. You're going to put F for family, E for ESOP, and T for third-party sale. And I'll give you 1 minute to complete that right now. Again, a quick reminder, you can always pause the recording and resume once it's complete. Perfect. Let's return to the presentation now. Once you've had a chance, please share your answers to number 14. The disadvantage: statistically lower chances of successful transitions after previous ones. You have 30 seconds to answer and read your answers here. If you guessed it was F for family transition to that disadvantage, you were right. 88% of current family businesses believe the same family or families will control their businesses in 5 years. But succession statistics undermine this belief. Only 30% of family-owned businesses survive to the second generation. 12% are still viable by the third generation. And only about 3% of family businesses operate into the fourth generation or beyond. These statistics come from a Family Business Institute 2016 report and indicate some important realities to us. A low percentage of businesses that make it to the fourth generation is not only due to the lack of succession planning. Another reason is the modern attitude towards family businesses have changed dramatically in the last 2 to 3 generations. There is a lot more social and economic mobility available now than there were several generations ago, and many young people try to take advantage of that. So as a business owner operates a farm in a small town and their son's an engineer in the neighboring big city with his family for the past 20 years, it's unlikely that he'll move back and take over the family farm. Similarly, many changes to technology have dramatically altered long-term viability of many businesses. Digital technology, automation, telecommunications have impacted the number of local businesses and workers needed for many jobs and services. And advances in artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotics seem to indicate this trend's going to continue. Depending on the industry that the business is in, the product or the service provided by the businesses may become obsolete in a single generation, or may not be able to compete with a global economy. Moreover, data from Stats Canada indicate that that Canadian families are not as large as they used to be. In the 1950s, couples on average had 4 children per household. By 2010, that number decreased to 1.5 children per household. While not all family transitions are from parents to their children, these statistics highlight the changes in family transitions in 2020 and beyond. So why do people pursue family transitions in spite of these odds and challenges? There are obvious personal motivations to keep the business in the family so that it can continue providing for future generations. But some of the other advantages are family transitions usually excel in transitioning all the intangibles because the incoming owner is often a son or daughter who has been around the business a lot. These are types of things that the business owner might only be able to pass to the third-party buyer through a mentorship process to ensure the same high level of knowledge transfer. The incoming and exiting owners may trust each other more because of their familiar relationship, which can make some processes easier. Similarly, if the existing owner and incoming owner have a good family relationship, they may have a shared vision of the future of the business. However, as the stats show, there are some disadvantages to pursuing family transitions that can hinder its success. For example, there tends to be a lot of unspoken assumptions among family members, which can lead to problems in the transition process. Additionally, conflicts in family cross over into the business and vice versa. A bad fiscal quarter can impact the relationship, while a domestic argument can make work more challenging. Lastly, keeping the business in the family doesn't necessarily mean the incoming owner is the best choice for the role. They may not be able to secure the financing needed to purchase it, or they may lack the business acumen to run it successfully. Or simply, they might not be interested in the family business at all. Employer share ownership plans. As part of your homework, there is a quick video to watch by an industry expert. Dave will walk you through a number of different advantages. He mentions ESOPs are great in terms of how much privacy and confidentiality that they offer. He also mentions that ESOPs can really motivate and train employees to think like owners to prepare them to succeed. Lastly, he talks about certain tax planning options because of all the flexibility in issuing shares and structuring the sale. And something else he didn't mention that is that they offer financing options since the incoming owners have equity in the company and as a group as opposed to an individual buyer. Of course, there's also some disadvantages to doing an ESOP. There's a cost associated with setting up the corporation and issuing shares to every new employee. Firing an employee, therefore, is more complicated since it's like dissolving a partnership. And similarly, managing work relationships between employees can be difficult as there's more at stake. These are just some of the advantages and disadvantages to consider when looking at an ESOP. Lastly, let's look at third-party sales. So third-party sales can include a wide range of sales and structures, all depending on the third party. For example, the third party could be a young entrepreneur looking at their first business. It could be the competitor, a private equity group, international buyer, or a number of other possibilities. There's one of the benefits to a third-party sale, of course. When there's more buyers than sellers, it can offer a lot of choice in terms of who purchases the business. It can also be very opportunistic. The owner can put themselves in a position to take an offer as soon as one comes along. Selling to a third party can also help the owner maximize the sale price, as there could be more competition between potential buyers that could use to leverage the negotiation. However, there are some challenges to going through a third party buyer as well. When selling, when there's more sellers than buyers, it can be difficult or less lucrative for a business owner looking for a third-party sale. Due diligence is obviously more important as it can take longer since the buyer to get the information since they're not a family member or employee. As a consequence of that, it's important that the owner prepare their succession plan well in advance to avoid any potentially lengthy delays later on in the process. especially during the due diligence. We will talk about this more in the next session when we talk about stages of business transition, but if your client's thinking about doing a third-party sale, here are some tips. Get their books in order first. It's really important to know the financials of the business actually show as soon as possible. Honesty is the best policy. They are going to have to reveal a lot of information, and some of the information might not make their business look so good as they want it to. That's okay. It's still best to be honest in all aspects of the business. If they've provided any false or misleading information, they could be liable even after the sale of the business. They will need to find time for the due diligence process. It can be a full-time job in itself. Owners should prepare staff or processes in advance of the day-to-day operations of their business while they go through the due diligence stage. They can also prepare a sell book. This is a compilation of all the documents the buyer may ask for in the due diligence stage. It should include things like terms of sale, incorporation documents, capitalization table, closing checklists, all the financials for the last 3 to 5 years, and so on. We'll talk a lot more about this in the next session. If they're interested in selling their business to an international buyer, confirm that their business is P&P eligible before pursuing this option. We'll discuss this more in session 4. All right, so here are the correct answers on page 6. I'll just give you a moment to check your answers. If you answered E for 1, 3, 5, 12, 16, and 17, you are correct. If you've answered F for 2, 6, 7, 10, 14, and 18, you are correct. And if you've answered 4, 8, 9, 11, 13, and 15 for T, you are correct. So based on this, which one are you most familiar with? Look forward to hearing your responses. So that brings us to the end of Objective 3. This is what we've learned so far. 3 common types of business transitions, advantages and disadvantages of each, which one are you the most familiar with, and then possible considerations on moving forward. Objective 4. There will be no new information in this objective, but we're going to use what we just learned and apply it into some realistic case studies. In addition to considering these case studies from succession planning lens, using the information we presented today, please also consider these situations from your own perspective, knowledge, and experience as well. Doing so will help you apply these succession planning knowledges we've discussed in the context and using your own experience as well. Also, please note that these case studies are fictional scenarios based on a combination of real ones where all the details have been changed. Any resemblance to real people or businesses is purely coincidental. All right, so if we pull up our first case study, Chester is a third-generation farmer near Weyburn, Saskatchewan. He has 3 children, all now adults, all of whom get along really well, but now live in Saskatoon. A long time ago, one of Chester's sons expressed interest in moving back to the farm and turning it into a ranching operation, which is different than what Chester and his father did, growing crops. A nearby farm recently posted for sale, and in less than 6 months found a buyer who is willing to pay more than the asking price. Chester hasn't kept good books over the years, but he's very interested in staying on and mentoring the incoming owner. So this case study can be found on page 8 of your e-handbook, case study number 1. The top is the explanation of the situation. Using that, you'll answer these questions. Type of transition to pursue, meaning, do you think Chester should pursue a family transition, ESOP, or third-party sale? Then reasons, meaning reasons why you think he should pursue this type of transition. Think about the advantages and disadvantages we discussed, as well as any other factors you may be aware of. Then What important information is missing? What information would you ask Chester? What else would you like to know about Chester to better understand his situation, and which option might be a best fit for him? And coming from your own experience and expertise, what would you want to know? We're going to answer those in these 3 boxes again on page 8 of your e-handbook. Similar to previous exercises, please feel free to pause this recording as you input those answers. All right, so let's review what type Chester should pursue. There are a number of different possible answers to this case study, but we'd like to suggest pursuing a third-party sale for the following reasons. As a third-generation farmer, it's statistically very unlikely that a family transition will be successful. Keeping in mind, of course, that statistics aren't merely a reflection of possible issues that might exist, such as desired career paths of his children, the pace of technology, globalization, and so forth. Chester is likely assuming his son still feels the same way that he did many years ago, which can be a fatal assumption. And since Chester's son has different ideas for the farm he wants to ranch, this could be a huge source of conflict. The recently sold farm indicates that there may be a market for Chester's farm if he's willing to sell to a third party. And Chester's willing to mentor, which means selling to a third party, even though he hasn't kept good records, it also indicates that he's emotionally invested in the farm and would not sell to someone like his son who wants to do something completely different with it. Some questions we'd like to ask to get more information from Chester would be, does Chester have employees? If he does, are they interested in taking over the farm? Then could he consider doing an ESOP? What are the timelines for selling the farm? While a third-party sale seems like the best option, the due diligence stage may take longer since he hasn't kept good books, which is something that he should be aware of. How much does he think it's worth and why? We'll talk more about this in the next session, but if Chester doesn't know or can't justify his asking price, then that could make a third-party sale significantly more difficult. Would he be able to talk to his son? Just rule out the possibility that the son is interested and that they could agree on a shared vision? And what has he done, if anything, to prepare? Anticipating a third-party sale, it would be good to know if Chester's done anything at all that might help during the due diligence, including figuring out a way to keep the day-to-day operations going while he focuses on selling the business. Case study number 2. Now let's turn to page 9 of your e-handbook, where you'll find the second case study. This time the entrepreneur's name is Stephanie, and the situation has changed, but the questions you will answer are the same. Again, a reminder, you can pause this recording as you input your answers. In a minute here, we will pull up some suggestions from Succession Matching for review. All right, so Succession Matching suggests that Stephanie should look at doing a third-party sale or an ESOP, though both seem to have pros and cons, indicating a family transition option in this. Nothing indicates a family transition is an option in this scenario. So let's first look at an ESOP. Stephanie's primary goal seems to be her timeline, and the advantages of the ESOP are that she already has set up a business for that type of transition. She already has an interested employee. As an ESOP, due diligence can be easier, and it sounds like it's already completed. The only disadvantage is that the employee isn't able to find financing to transition as quickly as she'd like. It'd be good to know if Stephanie can justify her asking price, and we'll talk more about this in session 2. If the real value is less than what she believes, adjusting her asking price may help reduce her timelines. She could also seek out more financing options. For example, if she asks for if her asking price is justified, she could potentially engage more employees in the transition to create more financing options, or speak to a lender such as their local community futures about financing options for this transaction. Is she willing to adjust her timeline? It's important, or is it more important for her to sell within her timeline or receive the full value of her business? Does she have a communications plan? Since the sale has been posted publicly and may take longer than she expected, is she communicating with her staff, suppliers, and customers in a way that's going to maintain the value of her business during the sales process? These are some of the main considerations that we would say for someone in Stephanie's positions for an ESOP. But let's also look at it from a third-party sale standpoint. If she does a third-party sale, she may be able to find a buyer who's already has the financing in place to purchase her business. However, it's uncertain how long that will take. And since she hasn't got any serious offers yet, it's likely she needs to work on preparing for due diligence. The questions are very similar as we saw in the ESOP, but since they're depending on how she answers them, that may point her in a direction of ESOP or third-party sale or vice versa. How did she value her business? What financing options is she aware of? Adjusted timelines? How is she managing communications? Has she completed a sell book? And has she considered her P&P eligibility? We'll talk more about the last two items in session 2 and session 4. Ultimately, an ESOP seems like it would be the best choice for Stephanie since it appears to be the most achievable for her timelines and still get the business ready for a third-party sale in the meantime, should be the right offer comes along. All right, so we're going to turn to page 10 and 11 of your e-handbooks and look at case studies number 3 and 4. The situations are different, but we're going to be walking through the same questions. Quick reminder, you can pause this recording as you're answering those questions on page 10 and 11 for the case study of Nicole and Al. What type of transitions do you think Nicole and Al should pursue? Example, third-party sale, ESOP, family transition. Let's take a deeper look at that. Starting off with Nicole. Succession Matching recommends that she should be looking at an ESOP. It seems to be the best fit for her. Privacy is a big concern. She'd have to let go of that for a third party or international buyer. Because she's so hands-on, it might be difficult for her to find the time for the due diligence process for a third-party buyer or international buyer. The ESOP structure might actually help her employees think more like owners and gain some practical experience they need to run the business. Since her employees don't have any business experience, would they still be able to obtain the financing needed? It would be good to know why Nicole has privacy concerns that she does. Since Nicole has completed a sell book, it seems like she doesn't have, has done some of the preparation for due diligence and sharing the information about her business. If she's willing to continue sharing information, and the other types of transitions might be a better option for her. A number of interested parties might give her some negotiating power. Nicole seems to be concerned about her employees, and so selling to a competitor who's just going to do an asset sale might not be wise, but she may want to continue searching for a third party who wants to continue the business. Similarly, does she have any family members with whom she'd be concerned about sharing the information and who she might be interested in taking over? These are some of the main considerations we saw for someone in Nicole's position. Now let's take a quick look at Al as well. So Al's case study shows us the situation does not fit neatly into the categories that we discussed and may require a little bit more out-of-the-box thinking and a lot more information. Because of the complexity of Al's business, the fact that he seems to be running 2 separate ones and one of his employees and one is a family member. Al is a prime example of someone who needs to talk to their accountant and lawyer to find out what their options are. Assuming he's done this and all 3 options are a good fit for him, We can see some advantages and disadvantages for each. But the most opportunity for Al to do a combination of a family and an ESOP. His two long-term employees indicate they have some good working relationships and knowledge of business and might be interested in continuing on the cattle business. Since there's likely a lot of trust between Al and his daughter, they may be able to plan the transition over a long period of time, by which time hopefully the tourism side has bounced back. Unless the employees and the daughters have some conflict with each other, they could work together and benefit each other. Moreover, if we consider a third-party sale, it might be difficult for Al to find someone with a combination of cattle ranching and tourism experience and interest. And given the state of tourism at the moment, a third-party sale may struggle to find financing for that purchase. Moreover, because of the complexity of Al's business, he would need to do a lot more preparation for a third party, and his daughter and long-term employees who have already well aware of the many ins and outs of the operation. Having said all that, getting more information here is important for a lot of different aspects. And so, are the revenue streams interdependent? Do people pay to see the cows? Would they be able to separate the two businesses and sell them individually? Does Al want to continue living on the homestead? If so, a family transition may have more advantages. What's the relationship between the daughter and the employees? Would the employees mind if she took over the business? Would she mind if the employees became owners? Would they work together, or would the relationship need to be clear, defined with respect to the businesses? And what are his timelines? The longer he's willing to wait, the more structure of the sale as necessary for accounting and complexity, and see how the tourism side rebounds. Depending on how Al answers all of these questions, it could dramatically affect what his options are and which ones are more preferable. But the sooner he starts his succession plan, the sooner he'll find direction and begin to steadily move towards his goal of retirement. So that's a wrap for objective number 4. You just applied your knowledge to some realistic case studies, and in doing so, you demonstrated that you were able to identify the best types of transitions, knowing the advantages and disadvantages. And you were able to recognize information gaps that could potentially be important for your client to know. So the purpose of today's session, what we set out to do today, was to explain what the Ambassador Program is and how you fit into it. We discussed what succession planning is and why it's important to you, your community, and our society. You learned 3 different types of ownership transition and described some advantages and disadvantages to each. You were also assessed on your own understanding of this information and these skills with individual exercises, group discussions, and case studies. So congratulations on completing the first session of the Succession Matching Ambassador Program. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thanks again for taking part in the Ambassador Program. We really look forward to working with you throughout this entire process. The Ambassador Program next session is on formal succession plans, followed by client engagement, international buyers, and best practices. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and really appreciate you attending today.